Morning, guys. It's Friday, September 26th, 5:28 a.m. Central Time. Grain market's just a little bit lower this morning. Matt Bennett is here. Mackenzie is out, so I will be the newsman today, Matt.
There we go.
All right, let's start off with this. I'm not going to read a ton of copy here. Trump said yesterday that there's going to be a farmer bailout. Rather than me read the copy, let's just listen to Trump. Here's a quick video clip for you guys.
We're going to take some of that tariff money that we made, we're going to give it to our farmers who are, for a little while, going to be hurt until it kicks in. The tariffs kick into their benefit. So we're going to make sure that our farmers are in great shape because we're taking in a lot of money.
As we had thought, the farm bailout is coming. What are your thoughts?
Well, this is a touchy subject, as you know,
Yes.
But I will say this. There's a lot of growers that are struggling here. There's no doubt about it. So there's certainly going to be clamoring for farm bailout money. But I'll tell you what, if someone wants to get smart with us about it, the farmer isn't typically the one that's asking for it. It's the industry that's asking for the money.
Correct.
You know that, and I know that. And you can say, well, what farmer's going to turn it down? Well, I'll tell you what, when you're in a situation where the inputs that you're paying for, you're being affected with trade and tariffs. Your output is being affected by trade and tariffs. It puts the farmer in a very precarious situation. And we can throw all the shade we want, but I can tell you there are very few farmers out there advocating and that even want this money. They would like to see our trade situation straightened out to where, basically we're not getting hurt on both sides.
Yeah. The payments have proven to be, so they've been doing farm payments for a long time. There's been a lot of payments in particular since COVID. And I would absolutely make the argument that the direct farm payments have resulted in input inflation, and that in the grand scheme of things, they've probably hurt the farmer more so than helped the farmer.
Yeah. And I mean, I would tell you, Joe, that, there's some growers that are going to not like what I'm going to say here, but maybe the best thing for the market would be, no money and let this market try to sort itself out. There's some fluff, there's some pork. I wouldn't enjoy it personally either. I mean, heck, I've got farm interests. But unfortunately, Joe, if you throw $80 to $100 at the grower, we are going to kick the can down the road and even make things worse, in my opinion. I think that cash rents are going to stay high.
Yep.
I think that, people are still going to have to pay more for land than what they would otherwise. I mean, clearly there's still a lot of money out there. Don't get me wrong. But these guys trying to keep up with the Joneses, so to speak, I'll tell you what, the farm payment emboldens them and digs them a bigger hole. I'm afraid it's just my opinion.
Okay. So the Bloomberg article says that there could be a relief package in the coming weeks. And I think what that means is that it will be announced in the coming weeks, and whatever they call it, it'll eventually be paid probably next year would be my guess. If I had to guess dollar amounts, you're probably talking another $10 billion, $15 billion, somewhere in that neighborhood.
At least, I've seen a couple different articles just surmising, what might happen here. Here's another problem though, Joe. If we don't know what the program is here for another 4 to 6, 8 weeks, the growers making a lot of decisions right now, and in some cases is kind of forced to make some decisions based upon money that they need, so on and so forth. Just like last year, we found out the yield in January. And it completely changed the dynamics of the markets. And we bought a lot of cheap corn off the grower in the fall. Man, I wish we knew more information right now for the grower as far as what a program might look like. Again, these guys don't necessarily want it, but it would help make some marketing decisions for them potentially, because those that can store, might have the ability to hold on just a little bit longer on some, because they don't want the crop right now. We know that.
Yeah. No. The next story is perhaps related. The DOJ is going to investigate rising production costs for U.S. farmers. The agency will coordinate with USDA to assess input costs, such as equipment and fertilizer. The efforts aim to shield farmers and ranchers from rising and volatile production costs. The DOJ will review competition in the ag marketplace and enforce antitrust laws to promote fair markets. Meanwhile, the USDA continues to study fertilizer costs and explore potential relief options for farmers. I love this. This needs to be done. The bailouts, I get it, very contentious, but this I think most people will agree with.
I mean, I don't know how you could disagree with it. Okay, when you're looking at fertilizer, for instance, I mean, clearly you got a couple of major players, and one thing that you and I have noticed throughout our careers, I'm sure I've noticed it because I write the freaking checks for fertilizer. But
Hmm.
if the price of corn would go up for I don't know what reason for between now and spring, there's a lot of growers that are going pretty light on fertilizer this fall, if any. I mean, I've heard some cases where guys are just backing completely off of dry fertilizer, and then on nitrogen they're waiting till spring. They're just waiting on anhydrous. Hey, I might spring apply. I kind of want to see what happens. But if something were to force the corn market a dollar higher, let's say, and I don't know what that is right now, what do you think fertilizer is going to do?
Right to the moon.
Going up. That is all there is to it. And people say, well, why can they do that? Well, there's a couple of them. And guess what? Kind of like George Carlin said, it's this club and we're not in it,
Yeah.
And so we're just having to play the game. And so this is something that has needed to happen. I mean, the thing about equipment, there's a lot more competition than what there is with fertilizer. Okay.
Mhm.
In all honesty, with equipment, there's a lot more choices that can be made. I mean, a person can choose to run your old, house Chalmers until it dies. I mean, I've seen guys do it. But as far as fertilizer goes, it's a necessity if you're going to continue to produce. So I look at those two a little bit differently, and certainly, in my opinion, fertilizers needed to happen for a long freaking time.
Yeah. Brooke Rollins, this was from Brooke Rollins, who spoke at the USDA Outlook Forum. I believe it was in Kansas City. She also mentioned this as maybe a side note. They were talking about this plan to rebuild the beef herd. And she said this: we have no current plans to offer any payment to beef producers. We see how government getting involved can completely distort the markets. And so currently there will be no plan. No plan is even under consideration to insert ourselves through payments into the beef cattle industry. What do you make of that?
Well,
I think it's
did
the
she
right
say
move.
that in the paragraph after they're talking about direct farm program
I
payments
mean,
or what?
probably in the same hour,
Um, yeah, and so in all honesty, with this whole cattle thing, I mean, I don't know, in my opinion, if the government chose to get involved to try to lower consumer beef prices, they are going to screw this thing up so bad
Oh yeah.
that you'll never know what happened. And so they need to just stay the heck out of it, let the market sort itself out. Uh, yeah, I mean, they just need to stay the heck out of it. I agree with what she said in that paragraph. Okay.
Yeah.
And I think that they need to go check their cliff notes on the one up above.
One thing that I think a lot of they don't forget it, but our crowd that listens here is largely a farm crowd.
Yeah.
One thing that maybe people forget sometimes is that 99% of the population prefers low commodity prices,
Yeah.
prefers low beef prices, low prices of everything. It's our
Mhm.
crowd here that obviously prefers higher prices.
Yeah, exactly. But the thing that the people need to understand that might not understand farming as well is that if you go talk to a grower and say, hey, wouldn't you like to go back to the days where you would occasionally get a run up to 450, 475, but you could afford the input costs and still
Right.
make a couple $100 an acre on ground that you own?
Yeah.
Guys would love that, and gals. I mean, your grower, what they don't like is whenever you're starting out the year in the freaking red. I mean,
Yeah.
there's no way around. Right now, we're we're over $100 an acre for NP and K. Same program here in Central Illinois, and D's corn's lower than it was last spring. I mean, come on. It's there's nothing easy about it, but people would just like to at least feel like they've got a fighting chance to make some money here.
Yeah. As it relates to the consumer, one thing that I would note is that there's a strong correlation, I think, between cattle prices and beef prices ultimately. Whereas, like in grains, like grain markets are at multi-year lows, yet
Yep.
most of the stuff you buy at the grocery store is as expensive as it's ever been. So there's
Yeah.
not really that tie there in the grain markets to consumer goods like there is in beef, perhaps.
I've said it before. I'm gonna say it right again right now. Inflation has hit every freaking thing that the farmer is dealing with, other than what he's selling.
Everything they buy. Yep.
Everything. I mean, whether it's their goods at home, whether it's their inputs, inflation's hit the whole thing, other than what they're selling.
It
And
has.
so, yeah, that's why people are aggravated.
All right, let's revisit this. China bought around 40 cargoes of soybeans from Argentina this week. The drastic rise in purchases came during a 2, maybe 3 day window in which Argentina scrapped export taxes on products like corn, soybeans, and wheat. A total of about 2.6 million metric tons, or 96 million bushels, were purchased in total, based on Reuters reporting. Most of the purchases were for November and December delivery, which is typically the window in which the U.S. ships soybeans to China. China still hasn't bought a single bushel of U.S. soybeans for current marketing year delivery. This is just very bad timing and not really great news.
No, I mean, this is a kick in the nuts. I mean, that's all it is. You know, supposedly Trump's going to sit down and talk to Xi, end of October, 1st of November. What are they going to talk about now? I mean, soybeans, you are closing a window. Clearly, we started out with obviously Brazil is fulfilling their needs for September and most of October. Now, Argentina is taking care of it. And we're throwing money at them. U.S. is throwing money at Argentina. I don't know, Joe. It's problematic, to say the least.
It's frustrating. I had a big rant about it yesterday. Let's look at this real quickly. This is demand for U.S. soybeans last year. Last year, China represented 19% of our demand base. They bought 22.5 million metric tons, or 826 million bushels of soybeans from the United States last year. That's the marketing year that ended at the end of August. This year, they have zero on the books. So I guess the question is, like, how do you replace that 19%? Can it be replaced in full, or can it be replaced at all? I mean, this is kind of the thing that we're wrestling with right now.
Yeah, the problem with the current balance sheet, Joe, is that with our crush industry set up as it is, I mean, there's really no more capacity there. Okay, USDA has got this ramped up. Okay, are we going to grow the crush industry over the next 3 years? Yeah, but it doesn't happen overnight.
No,
you know, and so how do you replace that? You don't. I mean, that's the issue. I think a lot of us would settle for, hey, they're going to buy 10 or 12 million tons off of us this year due to some sort of, finagling.
That'd be a victory now.
That'd be a huge victory, and so, yeah, I mean, it's a problem. I mean, that's all there is to it. You can't replace it. Now, I would say, our other people we deal with, as far as our export market, they've been buying some beans, but still they pale in comparison to what China buys. And so, yeah, I don't know. Part of it for me is that if you could keep the soybean price somewhat elevated, it would be, I mean, typically that is good, obviously, for the price of corn in some ways, because if the grower takes a look at NOV 26 and says, I can make that work better than what I can make Dees work, at some point, December corn is going to have to do something because all this massive demand we've got, right? Well, if beans are in the tank, I mean, I don't know. 26 looks to me like it could be just as bad or worse than what we experienced last year and this year.
To be clear about the math here, so Argentina sold 2.6 million metric tons of beans to China. The U.S. sold 22.5 million metric tons of beans to China last year. So my understanding of this right now is that China's probably covered with its needs through October, and now they've got some of their November and December needs covered, but I don't think they're totally covered.
No, I agree.
I think you could still make a case that China may need to come in and buy some U.S. soybeans, but it's seeming more and more unlikely every single day.
I have felt all along, Joe, that China was going to buy U.S. beans. Okay, there's something that's going to occur, something that's going to happen. I don't know, but
they don't want to draw down their stocks. They're sitting on,
no.
I think USDA says it's like 40 something million metric tons of ending stocks.
Yeah.
If they don't buy that 22 from the US, I mean, you could argue they're going to draw down those stocks substantially.
Right.
They don't want to do that.
And really, when you look at the world, when you look at the world balance sheet, as far as beans are concerned, a year ago, we were talking about 130 plus million metric tons of beans. And, we're around 10 million below that right now. It's not like we've seen this massive increase in world stocks, if you will. If China, in my opinion, does what China does, they don't want to draw down stocks.
No.
And they don't want to get in a situation where if Brazil has an off crop, they're having to buy beans $2 higher than today.
Yeah.
They don't want to get caught there. And so, I still think they're going to buy some beans, but it's going to pale in comparison to what they bought a year ago.
We've got a stocks report on Tuesday next week. Believe it or not, the trade expects, and I guess you wouldn't know this by looking at the prices, but corn stocks as of September 1st in the United States are estimated to be 24% lower than a year ago. Soybean stocks estimated to be off 5 to 6%. Wheat stocks up a couple percentage points. But you look at the corn market, you wouldn't think that stocks were off 24% versus a year ago.
No, and I would say, Joe, the guys on the JSA side of things, they That's our partner. You know, they're on the commercial side and more so. And you know, a lot of the analysis they're looking at, things we talk about in every single morning, you know, or how heavy it's felt, for instance, in the Minnesota, North Dakota, South Dakota area as far as cash corn was concerned. And this been going on for a while. Everyone knows that you can't catch a bid in North Dakota right now. It sucks for some of these guys. I get it. But I feel like the absolute dearth of corn in the Eastern Corn Belt is maybe a little more than offset, you know, whenever you get into that part of the world. And so if you came in at more like a 1.4, I wouldn't be shocked. You know, I think that you could get a little bit of a bearish surprise on this stocks report, just based upon the cash market, basis levels, spreads. I don't know. I feel like you might see a little more corn show up.
One thing that I keep hearing from subscribers, and this is especially in the Central Corn Belt, is that a lot of the corn that's being delivered is actually old crop corn. A lot of the stuff that's being delivered here the last couple of weeks is more than half of its old crop corn, which is pretty crazy considering, you know, how tight USDA says it is.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I think that you might get a little bit of a bearish surprise here. I think there was a fair amount of old crop sitting around. People were just waiting. I mean, a couple, 3 years in a row now, you're just waiting. Hey, let's get some sort of a weather market. Your weather market comes so late in the year that the market is deadened to it because you've thrown this massive number at it, right? Last year and this year. And so these years are playing out fairly similarly. The problem that people might fall into is that they assume that everything's going to play out exactly the same on into January. And there's no guarantee that's going to happen.
Yeah. Let's go to export sales. I'm not going to read the copy here, but the soybean program, not good.
Nope.
And this is largely because China's absent. Worst book of sales in the last 10 years. It's almost kind of surprising to me that we're not doing slightly better given how competitive we are. Like it feels like everybody but China should be buying U.S. beans. And you are seeing that to some extent, but the book is terrible.
No, it is terrible. You know, I mean, and we are very, like you said, very competitive. I mean, the real's rallied versus the dollar the last several weeks, and I mean, we're sitting in pretty good shape as far as fall values go. But yeah, I mean, this is a terrible book. I mean, it's opposite, polar opposite on corn. But
yeah, okay. So here's corn. We have the best book of export sales of the last 10 years, tracking 2021 fairly closely. Demand's been fantastic.
Yeah. Absolutely. And yesterday's sales were great again. I mean, and another thing, you know, we continue to see some of these surprise announcements, you know, to Mexico. Well, what are you going to do? I mean, those cattle are staying south of the border. I mean, you've got to feed the cattle that usually came north, you know, which tells me, you know, USDA is way too high on feed and residual usage, is my opinion. But I've got to think that this export number is attainable the way that things are going right now. I mean, just from my opinion.
Yeah. Here's wheat, second best of the last 10 years. You wouldn't know it. The wheat market's been absolutely terrible, Matt.
That's putting it mildly. I mean, there's nothing you can do. So let's check the wheat market for a pulse. I mean, it's yeah, but exports have been good. I mean, exports have been good, and you know, if you continue down this path, at least maybe we don't see the carryout number go up as significantly as we once thought it would. You know, that's one thing that you can maybe put as a feather in your cap.
Last thing we got today is the drought monitor. Drought has expanded really substantially in the Eastern Corn Belt, in what I'd call like the South Central Corn Belt, into the Delta. Yet it seems like the yield reports that we're hearing in those areas are not terrible. I mean, You tell me what you think.
Yeah, it's incredible, to be honest. Okay, so Joe, I had 3/10 of rain on Sunday night. I had another 7/10 Tuesday. The 3/10 I had on Sunday was more than what I'd had the previous 50 days. Okay, and so obviously we finished as dry as we could have. Terrible, just absolute terrible finish. But we really charged the soil in July. Okay, so we had a fair amount of subsoil moisture. Our black ground has been fantastic on corn and beans. Now, I'm not saying records. It's not. I mean, it's below a year ago, but pretty darn good stuff. We're on some light ground now. Okay. And so obviously the light ground doesn't typically hold the moisture near as well as your black ground. And we're seeing a yield drag of, a good 20 bushel. Okay. So soil type's really important in a year like this. I think it makes it really hard to gauge what is a final yield going to look like, because let's be clear, the last few years, it doesn't matter what your soil type was. If you finished with decent moisture, hybrids these days on poor ground as well as good ground can yield I mean, it can yield almost as good as what your best ground does.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what we've seen with these genetics. And so I do think that you might have a little bit of a pullback because your first stuff is typically going to be your best this year because we finished so dry. I got to still think there's a little bit of downward revision in yields.
Yeah, I am of the opinion. I think just based on what I've heard and based on what I've heard discussed, I think the corn yield is, I think USDA is overstating the corn yield. Soybeans maybe by a touch.
I think that corn yield is very overstated. Just, yeah, I mean, you're just not seeing, everyone thought I was going to be, the promised land, right?
Yeah.
And everyone was going to have 300 bushel corn. Well, there's a lot of good corn in Iowa. We know that, but there's a lot of disappointing growers too.
Outside market's pretty quiet this morning. Matt, thanks for joining me. Everybody have a wonderful weekend. We will be back on Monday.